Hey, shuckalugga kapow. How's it going, old schoolers? You're kicking it old school at Russell JS, and I am your host, Russell JS. I got another, I'm going to call them not album versus album. I'm going to call them Battle Royale of the albums. We got another one. I mean, this is one that I had been dreading for a while, but this is one I was hoping I wouldn't have to do, but I decided to do it anyway because, you know what? I want to rip on this album. This is that one I've been talking about doing. I sat down with it and I listened to both the albums that I'm going to be reviewing. Now, what do we got that I'm reviewing? I've been talking about doing this. Sammy Hagar, Marching to Mars versus Van Failure or Failin 3. Now, here's a story behind this. Now, both these albums were released, these CDs were released a year apart from one another, but there is, kind of a story of what was happening through this. Before I do the album review, you see, Van Halen, I guess they had just finished in support of their album Balance. They just finished doing a tour, for the album in support of it. And Sammy Hagar wanted to take a break. His wife was about ready to have a baby anytime soon. He wanted to take a break. And Eddie was like, oh, no, come on, man. We got to get back in the studio, lay out some tracks, for the next album. Because I'm guessing in a way, they were still obligated to some contract. I'm not sure. Well, Van Halen was at least. But what happened was Sammy wanted to chill out, and he wanted to do, put out a solo album at the time. And I guess they came to terms, came to an agreement. Hold on, I'll be right back. However, Sammy didn't go all the way taking a break that, in that summer in 1996 because they did for the summer blockbuster movies. The movie Twister was coming out, and Van Halen had a couple tracks for the soundtrack album. We all know the tune "Humans Being," but when you watch that movie to the very end, even after the credits scroll, there's an instrumental with guitar and keyboard. That's Eddie and Alex Van Halen. It's a little piece called "Respect the Wind." So I guess after "Humans Being," that's when Sammy decided he was going to take his break and be with his wife, so he could be there for the birth of his child. And Eddie, I guess the record company, they said, okay, you know what? For right now, let's go ahead and do a best of package. But you know what we'll do? We'll call David Lee Roth because I want to put in 2 bonus tracks. We'll call David Lee Roth and just have him do the 2 tracks, and then that's it. So what happens? Well, you got to think about the time of 1996, that summer. I mean, the Ramones were doing one more tour. They were touring with Lollapalooza, and they were calling it quits after 20 plus years. Metallica had just come out with the long-awaited LP Load. That's the big controversy. Remember when Metallica cut off all their hair and they changed their sound? Black Sabbath with all original members, Ozzy Osbourne, Tony Iommi, Geezer Butler, and Bill Ward, all reunited, which would be the start of the Ozfest. And let's see, AC/DC was on tour because the previous year they put out the album Ball Breaker. And, well, the Sex Pistols made a comeback, with reuniting with original bassist Glenn Matlock, which only lasted for a while. They were just going to go ahead and do what they did best, rob dollars off the Yanks. But, and then also, on top of all that, the original Kiss reunited. Gene, Paul, Ace, and Peter all reunited, and they did the best-selling international tour of any musician's career, the Alive Worldwide Tour. Oh, and remember, if you're new to the channel, hit a like, subscribe, leave comments in the box down below. Ring the bell for notifications. Tell your friends, tell your family, your mom, your dad, your grandma, your grandpa, your aunts, your uncles, your brothers, your sisters, your cousins, your classmates, your coworkers, your roommates, your pets, anybody who's anybody that would like to go kick it old school. Now back to the video. So what happened was Eddie has the genius idea to call David Lee Roth. Hey, look, man, Sammy's on a break and he doesn't want to do this whole thing with the, doing 2 new bonus tracks for a best of package. Would you mind coming in and laying down vocals for it? And Dave was all for it. And, according to, there's 2 sides of the story. Dave's side of the story, I guess, was that he was back in Van Halen and Sammy was out. And Eddie and Alex's side of the story was, no, we just wanted him to do the 2 tracks and he was done. That was it. And we were just going to go part ways and still do stuff with Sammy. But needless to say, I remember when it broke out on the radio and when it was on MTV and everybody was all excited, David Lee Roth was back in the band. I mean, we all thought I didn't care one way or the other, okay? I mean, sure, I'm a Sammy fan, but I really didn't care. I mean, I just wanted a new Van Halen record. I just wanted a new Van Halen album, and I wanted one now, right then and there, And needless to say, they became presenters at the 1996 MTV Video Music Awards. I think it was Best Male Video, and Beck took the win for it for that song he had, either called Where It's At or 2 Turntables and a Microphone, something like that, whatever that song was. But, David Lee Roth was going to the press. Oh, we're back together again. We're going to be doing a tour. Everybody's doing these reunion tours. We're up on that again. And Eddie, sometimes you could see when Dave was talking, you could see the awkwardness in the faces of Alex and Eddie. And, Michael Anthony, he just doesn't have a say in anything. He just doesn't care. Meanwhile, Sammy was furious because they betrayed him, and and what happened was it turned out after that award ceremony, there was a big feud between Eddie and Alex versus Dave. Okay. They were threatening each other, it was like a high school, oh, we'll meet out at the playground after school kind of deal and we'll beat each other up kind of thing. And before you know it, lo and behold, the thing was, what we didn't know was a few months after that, when all the news broke out in all the respective music magazines and, like Hit Parader and Rip and, Guitar World, Guitar School, was, there was a different thing that we didn't realize. And Eddie was mad. Eddie they had a whole column with Eddie being interviewed. He had the whole thing like with Sammy, and Sammy was telling his side, Dave was telling his. It became like a messy, high school based drama television series with these guys who were like already in their 40s and, just this whole turmoil. But what little did we know was if Sammy was going to be out of the band. Like I said, Dave was only there for the 2 songs. Eddie already had a backup plan. Enter extreme frontman Gary Cherone. Now, here's the thing. When I saw this, I was like, oh, great. What's this going to be like? And they spent a year, doing tracks and recording and a music video. And and we're like, what's going on with Sammy Hagar? We come to find out Sammy Hagar has got a whole new tour, and he's in the midst of recording a brand new album, a brand new solo record. And, meanwhile, what's going to be the next Van Halen record with the new lead singer? The rock magazines were making jokes, because I know some of you Gen Xers, some of you who grew up on Van Halen's music from the very beginning, I know a lot of you when Sammy Hagar joined the band in 1985. You were, and through his whole time in the band, you were calling the band Van Hagar. A good lot of you were saying Van Hagar. There were some people that even said Vangina, like vagina. But yeah, like needless to say, I think Sammy he felt better off that he didn't need those guys. And when you think about it, Sammy was touring and recording when them guys were cutting their teeth in the, high school dances and the, sleazy bar and club scene, trying to get discovered. So what we got, the reason of this video, I just went on for 10 and a half minutes. I mean, I'm looking at the thing right now. I'm putting these two albums. We've got Sammy Hagar Marching to Mars versus Van Halen 3. I mean, Van Halen. Because Gary Sharon from Extreme couldn't make the cut with these guys. I mean, this album, I remember when it was first dropped, I think it sold only 300,000 copies. And like I said before, when this album came out, they were in the magazines and everything, like Metal Edge and Metal Maniacs. They had, remember the pull-out posters, where I found the one poster where it was of the band with Gary Sharon. And on the other side of the poster was Pantera, which Pantera was also one of my favorite bands too. Still is to this day. And what happened was, I took the Pantera side and I had it faced out when I put the poster up on my wall. I'd rather Pantera than, this, what's supposed to be Van Halen, all over again. I mean, in my opinion, I'll say this much. The music on this was really good. Don't get me wrong. But the way, Gary Sharon sounds, it doesn't make the cut for me. I mean, I can remember a few months later, I found it in a $5 bargain bin, I think either Camelot Music or Record Bar or Tape World, one of them places, back when those places were open. And I'm glad I didn't waste whatever it was going to cost. Like back then, CDs, depending on the artist, they were costing roughly around, say, $15 to $21 a piece. And many years later, I go ahead and pick this up on eBay for way cheaper because I was curious about it. And, well, needless to say, I'm not a big fan of the album Diver Down, which is probably their fourth album that came out in '82. That's the one where they have their version of Oh Pretty Woman, because it was mainly cover songs, but I'll pick Diver Down over this any day. So, without further ado, let's see how the bad Oscar and the not so bad Oscar rank, shall we? Okay, here we go. Now, also Sammy Hagar Marching to Mars, supposedly most of those songs are about what happened during that time with Van Halen, but I'm not going to get into the politics of it. I just want to go ahead and do a review. All right, so here we go. In the case of Sammy Hagar Marching to Mars versus Van Failure 3, all right, that's way better, Van Failure. I'll even put that on the video title. How's that sound? Okay, let's see. Little White Lie versus New World. Well, I actually did like New World, and I love Little White Lie because it's got that kind of bluesy kind of sound and Slash plays on it. So I give them both a point. Salvation on Sand Hill versus Without You. Again, I actually like the first two tracks on both these albums, so I'm going to give them each a point. Would You Do It for Free versus From Afar. All right, here we go. 1 point, Sammy Hagar. Van Failure, zip. Leaving the Warmth of the Womb versus Dirty Water Dog. Once again, I give that to Sammy. Let's see. Kama or Kama, I think. Kama. I guess that's Kama. Kama versus Once. Again, point for Sammy Hagar. On the Other Hand versus Fire in the Hole. Well, let me go ahead and be honest. I love On the Other Hand, but you know what? I actually dug Fire in the Hole. Now don't get it twisted. Some of these songs are not earning points, but like I said, I love the way they sounded musically. Eddie, Michael, and Alex did great with the music. just Sherry Garone of excrement does not make the cut for me. I'm sorry. And I know there's some of you out there who actually love this album. And there's probably a small group of people out there, hundreds of thousands who love this album. But you know what? Me and a lot of others are going to disagree with you on it. It's that simple. Now, here's the thing. I love On the Other Hand, and I also love Fire in the Hole because I thought it was a great intro to that really bad Lethal Weapon 4 movie when Riggs and Murtaugh are in the pouring rain trying to go up against that guy with the flamethrowers causing chaos in the street. And there he was. He had a Walkman where he was listening to Van Halen, and that was the song playing. So you know what? I thought that was really cool, and I love the music to it. So I'm giving both On the Other Hand and Fire in the Hole a point. Both Sides Now versus Josephina. Again, I prefer Both Sides Now. The Yogis So High I'm Stoned versus Year to the Day. Man, let me tell you, Van Failure 3 is really tanking in this. I can't wait. The Yogi So High is getting the point, but I gotta say, I can't wait to go out and find more CDs I used to have and put them up against this. Especially the really bad albums. So that way I could call it a crud versus crud kind of video. Because I had a bunch of CDs, and some of these, like others were part of it that weren't that great, but I lost them anyway. And I thought, okay, I'll cut my losses, but I wish I never did. So, yeah. I went ahead and I gave the Yogi So High a point. Amnesty Is Granted versus Ballet of the Bullet. Ballot or the Bullet. Okay, you know what? I actually picked that one over Amnesty Is Granted. There you go. Okay? See, there's a few of these songs I like. Not the whole album's not all that bad. The rest of it, maybe it sucks, Last but not least, Marching to Mars versus How Many Say I. Well, leave in the comments box below how many I say that, yes, you know what? Sammy Hagar gets the point. So that means Sammy Hagar, Marching to Mars versus Van Failure 3. Sammy Hagar has 9 points. Van Failure 3 has 4 points. So that means now there was a track on here that I scratched out because it was a small instrumental for Van Failure 3. I think it was, but no bother. You know what? Yes, Sammy Hagar, Marching to Mars wins this video. Now back to that song title. If anybody agree, how many say I that Sammy Hagar, Marching to Mars is way better album than Van Failure 3? How many say I? Leave your comment in the box down below. And also check the notification, bell for more future videos. And I want to also say to you, as always, I want you to keep it real, keep it fresh, keep it chill, keep kicking it old school, listen to old school music, watch old school movies and TV shows, play old school video games, do old school things, get you enough of love, peace, tranquility, get you enough of less chaos, no chaos, less drama, no drama, keep it real, keep it fresh. And, as always, I want to wish you all Godspeed. May the force be with you always. And shakalaka kapow.